Welcome back to Touchline Talk by Soccerspective, where we highlight football managers shaping the modern game and what youth coaches can learn from them. I'm your host, Brandon Faust, and today we're diving into one of the most fascinating stories in the Premier League this season, Andoni Iraola and his Bournemouth side that have taken England by storm. They're currently, as the time of recording, sitting in third in the table, tied for third in the table, playing fearless, high-octane football that's caught the attention of fans, analysts, and even Pep Guardiola himself. So who is Iraola, and how did he turn Bournemouth into one of the most dynamic and disciplined teams in the Premier League? Let's dive in. Iraola was born inside Usurbil, Spain, a small town in the Basque country, and he came through the youth system at Athletic Club Bilbao, where he was a one-club man, besides a small little stint with New York City FC at the very end of his career. Over a 12-year career with Athletic Club, he made more than 500 appearances, captained the side, and became known for his intelligence, consistency, and technical precision as a right back. He played under my favorite manager in football history, Marcelo Bielsa, whose influence can be clearly seen in Iraola's obsession with pressing, movement, intensity, and defining his own true play style within even those influences. When Iraola retired in 2016 after a season with New York City FC here in the United States, it wasn't long before he was back on the pitch, this time with a clipboard instead of the captain's armband. And so his managerial journey, his coaching journey, started in Spain's lower divisions at Mirandés. He led a stunning Copa del Rey run in 2019 and 2020, beating top flight sides and reaching the semifinals with the second division squad. And that performance, that tournament run, certainly put him on the map as a young emerging manager. Next came Rayo Vallecano, where Iraola built a fearless side known for its high pressing and intensity. They gained promotion to La Liga and quickly became everyone's favorite underdog, not afraid to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Barcelona or Real Madrid. And that's what ultimately caught Bournemouth's eye. In 2023, Iraola crossed over into the Premier League, bringing with him a clear identity, a relentless play style, and the conviction that even smaller clubs could play proactive, courageous football and not just sit back and tuck in. So Bournemouth's transformation, Bournemouth, got back kind of on the map again under the leadership of Eddie Howe. And then obviously Eddie Howe went on to manage here at Newcastle United. But the first few months weren't easy for Iraola. Bournemouth's players struggled to adapt to his demands, the running style, the structure, the constant intensity, which mirrors, and the fitness levels demanded what Bielsa, and his teams would always demand. But once they understood the system, Bournemouth became a completely different team. Their pressing clicked. And pressing is one of those tricky things that if everyone isn't on the same page and understanding it, it breaks down, right? So eventually the understanding, the competency, the execution of these ideas start clicking. Their transitions from defending into attacking very quickly and where to be in that counterattacking style of football started to develop, and their attacking patterns started to flow. Now they're not just surviving, they're competing in the top part of the table and doing it with style. The Iraola way, tactics and style, kind of what's, he typically sets up in nothing that's like too, earth-shattering in terms of formation. He sets up in a 4-2-3-1 that often morphs into a 4-3-3, depending on the game phase. And the system's built on five key principles. The first is high pressing. They press high and hard. The structure starts zonally, forcing opponents to one side, and then shifts into like a man-to-man press when the ball goes wild. It's very coordinated. It's not chaotic. And so you start seeing these patterns of how they press, and it's how they get a grip on the game without the ball. And I think that's what some of the teams that we see that have had success in recent years, from Klopp's pressing teams to Arne Slot's pressing teams at Liverpool, to the way that Pep likes to press, to now how Iraola is pressing. It's very coordinated, and it's honestly plays into the hand of that team when they're defending. They want to win the ball in certain positions on the pitch so that they can transition quickly. The second thing is these quick transitions. Once they win it, they go. They're not afraid of a courageous vertical pass. Runners are flooding forward. You'll see the likes of like an Alex Scott or Tyler Adams get into really get into positions from that playing like a number 6 into the attack, even up onto the front line, right? They go positionless sometimes when those runners flood forward, and there's direct attacks before the defenses can reorganize, and they're often outnumbered. Just this past week against Crystal Palace, Bournemouth were setting up, defending well, and then next thing you know, there's a flood of runners going forward. They have transitioned from their own defensive 18, and now they're on the front foot, numbers up, creating opportunities. Again, against Crystal Palace, they weren't afraid to, when they'd win the ball in certain spots, to look for that long diagonal kind of penetrating ball across the field. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong, but they're not just playing boom ball. They're playing in this counterattacking style to put the opponents on the back foot. The next thing that we see is double width. Both the fullback and the winger push high on the same side, and it stretches play and creates these various overloads. Especially they do this well down the left flank, which is a frequent target area for them to attack and to expose weaknesses of the other team. And so when they transition quickly like that, a team might be ready for, say an outside back, a wing back, or a winger. But oftentimes when they overload it, they might bring, say a number 8 or a number 10 midfielder to that side, as well as those two players. And then it creates, numerical advantages, creates opportunities for then the defensive team to make some decisions on where who's going to press after the ball and things like that. And then mistakes are often made. And when you have the likes of like a Semenyo, you have these threatening wide players, it gives Bournemouth a great advantage. And then they have freedom within their structure. Players are given the green light to express themselves within this framework, this system, driving into space, combining the improvisation that happens in the final third. Iraola gives them the green light to go and to try and to create. And I think there is a refreshing style. This old, some of the old Spanish style of playing that we can see, this free flowing, this creative style that Iraola has brought into the Bournemouth side. And then relentless energy, similar to Bielsa teams. I think it's something he certainly picked up from him. It's not just about the distance covered, it's about the sprint intensity. Iraola demands physical commitment at all times, and his teams are trained to really live the game, as he says, never switching off for a second. And the way that he wants them to play, allows them permission to, yes, be controlled in defense, and to be smart and to pick their pockets. And he's not just asking them to run chaotically. He's asking them to, in these short bursts, in these game moments, I want you to press. I want you to look for the counterattack. I want you to go at pace in these moments. And I think something that we can't overlook here is his ability to develop and elevate players. One of the most underrated aspects of Iraola's career is how well, as a young manager, he has developed players, both young prospects and established ones. At Rayo Vallecano, he turned players like Fran Garcia, Palazón, Alvaro Garcia into standout performers. Fran Garcia is now over at Real Madrid, became one of Spain's best modern fullbacks under Iraola, known for his pace, overlapping runs, pressing awareness. Palazón evolved from a journeyman winger into La Liga's like a creative wide player, trusted with freedom and responsibility and a true attacking threat. And at Bournemouth, we've seen the same. Bournemouth lost Solanke, right, to Spurs, which was a huge miss. I mean, high goal output, but we've seen the breakthrough of a Semenyo, who's developed into a powerful two-way forward, capable of leading the press, finishing chances. He's just as strong with his left foot as he is his right foot. Alex Scott, the midfielder signed from Bristol City has flourished as a free roaming playmaker, often sits deeper, and then finds himself shooting himself up into the attack, connecting play, carrying the ball through pressure. And Iraola's gift is giving players clear roles. And I think this is important for coaches at any level. You might give a kid or a young person a position to play, but there's often times where we need to give them permission for a certain role to play within that position. We need an enforcer on the field, or we need a creative player. That creative player could be, a right back. That creative player might be a right winger. That creative player could be a number 10 or a number 8. So I think he's found a way to not only give them positions properly, but to give them a clear identified role and attributes that he wants them to utilize within the system, and confidence to play within their natural instinct inside the system. He trusts them to make decisions, and that trust seems to bring the best out of them. We'll see. The results have been good. We'll see what happens if they can maintain and sustain this. Do they have the depth to really make a run at European places? But statistically, Bournemouth's transformation it's incredible. They rank near the top in PPDA, passes per defensive action, showing how few chances opponents have to build play. And a lot of that is due to the ways in which they press, the moments in which they choose to press. They've scored the most goals from high turnovers in the Premier League and recorded one of the lowest expected goals against outside the traditional top 6. So they're scoring from their ability to press, their ability to move from that kind of zonal set up into a man-to-man press and hit people directly on the counter. Even Guardiola has praised Iraola's work, saying they're alive, they're aggressive, they're well organized, they're a good team. And alive, active might be the perfect word. When you watching back the Bournemouth Crystal Palace match from this weekend, I mean, it is lively. There is a lot of activity. It is not negative football, but they might sit back, but they're getting organized, and then boom, next thing you know, they're hitting on the break, and you're like, wait, the other team was just about to score. How is Bournemouth just put one in the back of the net? And I think for coaches at all levels, at all ages, for youth and grassroots coaches, Iraola offers a powerful example. His teams show that structure and freedom don't have to compete. They can complement each other. And I think there's a lot of times at different levels. I see it at the youth level, club soccer. I see it on certain teams, at various levels around the world, that they either are, let's play this free flowing style that's a bit chaotic and unpredictable, or it's so structured that it's limiting. It's so structured that it's almost like, instead of having some patterns of play, it's like, here's the pattern we want you to always use. Here's the script that we always want you to run from. And I think his teams show that structure and freedom can coexist together, right? Here's a defined play style. We're going to play in this formation. We're going to press this sort of way. We're going to be in kind of a zonal defense, and then we're going to go man-to-man here. But when we win the ball in these moments, this is when I want you to counter. When we win the ball in these moments, this is when I want us to cycle the ball. When we get the ball to the left's flank, I want to overload that side, and this is some of the ideas of how we're going to do that. But his players in this setup, I think it allows not only the more structured, regimented players, and not just the free-flowing, creative players. It doesn't just favor one of them or the other. The players at both of these kind of profiles are developed, not constrained. They're asked to think. They're asked to read the game. They're trusted to read the game. They're trusted to make decisions and to play with courage. And it seems like he's really built a culture where hard work and creativity can coexist. And he's allowed some of these players that were not well known to break through. And maybe even players that were beloved at Bournemouth before, players who would think to be, unable to be sold in the transfer market, or then maybe up for sale in the transfer market, or players that had been known for a certain style. He's not just letting them rest on their laurels from the past. And that's something that any coach at any level can take to heart. How are you rewarding those that are informed, those that are playing within the ways that you want them to, working hard? And in an era of everyone trying to play, even at the youth level, kind of build out of the back, tiki-taka style. Um, Iraola, I think, it finds a way of blending things that he's learned from um, various managers in the game, managers that he's played under, to define his own play style, to understand the limitations and constraints of the talent within your team, but then finding a way to play beautiful counter-attacking football. That isn't just this negative sit back and maybe once a game we get a chance. If you watch Bournemouth, they're taking their chances. They have good build up play. They have, here's how we're going to build up, here's how we're going to overload a side. But then they also have, man, we just won the ball in our defensive third, and we're not afraid to ping a ball and go after it and play direct. And so I think that's important for us as coaches, that oftentimes, we want to give freedom and trust to our players. We also want them to play a certain style. And so how do we find a way to give get people in the right positions where they can succeed, but also give them a role and understand their strengths and understand their weaknesses as well, to allow them to have their best foot forward, how they can contribute to the group and how they can do something special. And I think what we're watching right now by Iraola is special. I think it's unique. Where clubs are spending, ridiculous amounts of money. I'm not saying Bournemouth hasn't splashed some cash on players, but watching them compete, watching them go toe to toe with some of the big six has been phenomenal. And seeing that, I know it's still early in the season, we're towards the end of October, but them sitting in that top third of the table is just a big success. And I think it's given us some ideas of ways that the game is evolving and changing, and maybe some old ideas are coming back into the game through what Iraola is doing at Bournemouth. So keep an eye on them. I think they're going to be a fascinating watch this season. That's it for this episode of Touchline Talk by Soccerspective. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe, leave a review, like this video, and share it with somebody that loves the game, whether they're a Premier League fan or a coach that would enjoy learning more of the insides of the game. I'm Brandon Faust. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Touchline Talk.